Hi, my name is Dan May. I'm with the City of Omaha Air Quality Control Division. We are one of the partners in the Little Steps Cleaner Air outreach program. And part of what we try to do is to educate people on how to keep our air clean and what the issues that we're dealing with here in Omaha. And so today I'm going to talk to you about ozone, like what ozone is and why it's an issue for Omaha and what we can all do to help keep our air cleaner in an ozone perspective. So with that, I will be sharing a presentation. First, a little bit about what I do. I am an air quality control technician. In the city of Omaha, we are delegated authority by the EPA, basically to regulate any industry that is going to be operating in a way where they put air pollutants into the air. So if you do want to operate one of those industries, it could be, for instance, let's say a power plant or a place that puts out like uses a lot of solvents, so they're going to be putting out some pollutants that I will talk about here in a little bit. You have to come through my office, and what we do is we just basically make sure that you're doing what you can to minimize your impact on our air. So we help keep the citizens of Omaha healthy and safe from air pollution. So again, like I said, I'm going to be talking about ground level ozone today. And we'll learn a little bit about it, and we'll kind of see what we can all do to minimize our own impacts on ozone pollution. So like I said, my office, we get our authority from the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. That agency, covers pretty much all, environmental pollution, chief of which I believe is air pollution. And so the EPA has listed 6 pollutants, what they call criteria pollutants, and those are kind of the things that, like, if somebody is going to construct anything that's going to emit these pollutants or cause greater pollution, then they do have to try to control that. So those 6 pollutants are carbon monoxide, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide. Particle pollution we call PM10 and PM2.5. Those are very, very small particles of dust or other types of particle pollution. And then ozone, which is, again, what we will be talking about today. So what is ozone? As you can see here, it says O3, and we've got a little molecule on there. So if everyone could just do me a favor and take a deep breath in and just hold it for a second, and then exhale. All right, so what your lungs just did there was take in the air, which has about, well, it was 15 to 20% oxygen, which is O2. That's just, if you look at the molecule on the left there, and you take off the single atom by itself, and you just look at those 2 atoms together, that is O2, that is oxygen. Like when we talk about oxygen and what we need to live, what your lungs just did there was they took the oxygen, the O2, out of that air and used it to help your body sustain itself. What we're talking about is ozone, which is O3. It's when there's that extra atom added on to the O2. So O2, oxygen, is necessary for our body to sustain itself. But O3 actually has lots of different effects on our body than what that O2 is. And I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So again, what is ozone? I think most people, when they think of ozone, when they hear ozone, or when they've ever heard of ozone, we think about it as, oh, the ozone layer. And the ozone layer is necessary for us to be protected from the sun's UV rays. So we think about ozone layer, it's way up high. That is in what we call the stratosphere. That is, well beyond where we live. It's way up high, and that actually, without that layer, we couldn't go outside. You go outside, you get an instant sunburn. The plants couldn't grow. Like we could not live without the ozone layer, which is way up high. But what we like to say in my profession is, as the slide says, good up high, bad nearby. So up high in the stratosphere, it protects us. It helps us be able to live without the sun's UV rays harming us or plants or anything else. But when ozone is down at what we call the troposphere, which is ground level where we live, it is actually harmful to us. It can harm our breathing, and it is not good. So I listed all those pollutants back there, and ozone was one of them. One thing that's important to note is that we do not, ozone is not something that we get just from, like, there's not just like a plant that is putting out ozone. Like you see like some smoke or some steam coming from a stack and, oh, that's ozone. It actually is formed when two types of pollutants, what we call NOx, which is nitrogen oxides, and VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, combine in the presence of heat and sunlight. And what that sort of does is it kind of cooks, and those two types of chemicals react and they form ozone. And then that is what can get in our lungs and harm us. So that's why kind of when we talk about the ozone season, it's normally in spring and summer, because that's when we have the most heat and sunlight. So typically when we are talking about ozone pollution, we're talking about the summer, which is also when we tend to be outside and active. That's why the summer is kind of the important time where we need to really be aware of what ozone pollution, what the levels of ozone pollution are, and then also what we're doing so we don't help contribute to the formation of ozone. So, okay, so I mentioned that ground level ozone can harm our health. Typically, what we're talking about with that is that it actually damages our lungs. So when you take that breath in, like I had you do a little bit ago, or like as you've been doing as you're listening to this, your body, your lungs are processing that air. They're taking the oxygen out. They are expelling, the other pollutants that you do not, or excuse me, the other chemicals in the other gases in that air that you don't. And that's when you exhale. That's what your body's putting back out there. Well, when there are high levels of ozone in that air, it actually is harming your lung tissue. So if you look at, kind of the side by sides there, the healthy lung tissue, that's what your lungs, especially, for younger people, that's what your lungs are typically going to look like. But if you look at over on the right, lung tissue that's been exposed to high levels of ozone, you can see how it started to break down in the top photo, or in the bottom photo. You see it's red, it's kind of inflamed, it's sort of gotten it's swole a little bit. Well, and when that happens, it's harder to breathe. So you will find people who have been exposed to high levels of ozone, they get winded very easily. Like they go run, if you go run, they are short of breath very quickly. It's just harder for them to breathe. And one of the reasons we like talk to school kids about this is because that is one of the risk groups. So who is most likely at risk? As a grown-up, I don't really have respiratory issues. I'm not that much at risk, but elderly people, you know, your grandparents, anyone who, like, you know, as you go on, as you age, your lungs start to, you know, it's more difficult to breathe, uh, and that is definitely something that is going to be put you at risk. So if you are exposed to high levels of ozone, it's going to more easily damage your lungs. Children, so, you know, children, your lungs are still developing. Your lungs will develop, you know, until you're 18, 20 years old. They're still growing, they're still developing. So of course, if they are exposed to something that is damaging to your lungs, it's going to have a greater impact than on somebody whose lungs are already developed. As I mentioned, you know, people with respiratory issues, people who have asthma, people who have COPD, those types of people, and like for instance, my son has asthma, so his lungs are still developing, and he has respiratory issues. So that is somebody, and I'm sure, you know, most of you probably know somebody who has asthma. Those are those are people who are more susceptible to having their lungs damaged from ozone pollution. So that's definitely a risk group that we want to be aware of when ozone is high, or uh, you know, we want them to take steps to limit their activity outside when ozone is high. And people active outdoors. And like I said, in the summer, that's pretty much all of us. We are, you know, we like to get out. Um, if you're outdoors for a great period of time, then kind of the ozone can actually build up in your system. So that's why if you're going to be active outdoors, as I'll talk about later, you should definitely be aware of what the ozone is, what the ozone level is, to maybe limit that outdoor activity. It's not just people. Ozone also has an effect on plants. As you can see in these pictures here, normally a healthy plant's going to be green throughout. The leaves or the pine needles will just be green throughout. And you can see here, these plants have been exposed to high levels of ozone, and they're kind of you, you know, they've got the pine needles are a bit yellow, and what that's doing is, I mean, that's showing that damage, but that also means like that plant is less able to get energy from the sun, is less able to, you know, to perform. The leaves are less able to perform their function in helping that plant derive energy. What that means for a place like Nebraska is our crops. You know, of course, we're a very big agricultural state. We produce a lot of uh, food for the rest of the country and the world. Well, on high levels, when we see high levels of ozone, our crops are actually less able to produce. They get damaged. We have more plants that do not uh, provide a fertile yield, and it just like can actually, you know, kind of harm like a livelihood of you know, a great deal of people in our state. So that's something that we also need to be aware of and pay attention to. So, okay, so I said ozone, we don't get ozone straight from, uh, you know, a smokestack. It comes from combination of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds. So where do those come from? Where do those pollutants come from? Right here, this graph is showing you where nitrogen oxides come from in the Omaha area. So the 40% fuel combustion is largely power plants. So, you know, when we use electricity, um, it's coming from a power plant that is probably burning coal. Um, and the emissions from that plant uh, are about a little under half of those emissions are nitrogen oxides. You also see that the biggest source there is mobile sources, so it's cars and trucks and things that are on the road. That's one of the things that we talk about in the Little Steps Cleaner Air program is how we can reduce the amount of time and miles, our cars are on the road. And we'll talk on that just a little bit. So the other pollutant that we're concerned with is volatile organic compounds. Basically, those are combinations of carbon with other elements. And one good way to kind of visualize that is if you are at the gas station with your parents and you are watching them put gas in their car. If you look, especially if it's on like a warm day, if you look at where the nozzle's going into the car, you can usually see some little waves coming up from that. Those are actually, you're actually seeing those volatile organic compounds. That's what those are. They're evaporating into the air. And as you can see, like one of the sources of VOCs is from gas stations. So when you are filling up, or your parents are filling up their car, even though like we have, like, cars these days do have ways of like minimizing the amount that's evaporating out of that, we still do get emissions from those gas stations. Solvents are things like, it could be paint thinner if you're like cleaning, if somebody's painting their house and they're cleaning off the brushes, they might be using paint thinner, or it could be things like printers, people or businesses that print things on paper or cardboard boxes or whatever. They emit a lot of volatile organic compounds. And then once again, mobile. So as you drive your car, it's not only emitting nitrogen oxides, it's also emitting volatile organic compounds. So again, we keep coming back to one of the main sources is our vehicles, is what, just as we go about our day, as we're driving, that is causing ozone pollution. So we like to talk about how we can minimize those things. So a lot of times when we talk about ozone pollution or air pollution, when I go to talk to places, people say, well, I can remember when it was really bad. And people say, I know there used to be these plants that would just put all the smoke and pollution into the air. And these articles are from back about 50 years ago or so. And you can see this smoke that's just going into the air. And I wasn't around back then. You guys weren't around back then. But when that kind of stuff like sort of got removed, like people started to say, okay, well, yeah, our air is clean now, and it is much cleaner than it used to be. That's for sure. It's all across the country. Air is much cleaner than it used to be, and that's mainly because of the regulations that the EPA has put in place. However, ozone we cannot see. Like it doesn't have smoke. It doesn't have like particle pollution. You can see it looks like dust. Ozone is colorless. Like, so we don't, like when we have a high ozone day, almost certainly we won't actually be able to see it. So people think, okay, well, we're our air is clean now. We don't need to worry about it. But as we're breathing in that colorless, odorless gas, it actually can still harm us. So to that point, the EPA has set standards for all criteria pollutants. Currently, the standard is what we call it's 70 parts per billion. So if you take a just a sample of air out of 1 billion molecules of gas in that air, if 70 or higher of those are ozone, the EPA has determined that could harm our health. and our plants. And so as a guideline, they say, okay, well, all cities of a certain size need to make sure their air has less than 70 parts per billion of ozone. So what this graph is showing here is the different monitors. There's a bunch of monitors in Omaha that the Douglas County Health Department and the University of Iowa maintain, and those measure what our ozone level is. And as you can see, so the yellow line is what the standard is 70 parts per billion. As you can see, in the past, in the fairly recent past, our levels have been right around that standard. So what we are trying to do with the help of our partners, including the Metropolitan Area Planning Agency, is get people to take steps to limit what we do that helps contribute to that ozone. The Little Steps Cleaner Air program, that's kind of our slogan. What that means is that we can all do little things to change how we impact the air to keep the air cleaner. Those things can be things like carpool. So, you know, if a bunch of people ride together instead of all take their own separate cars, that takes cars off the road. Fill up your vehicle, like I said before. You can see those emissions coming off the nozzle. Fill up your vehicle in the evening because that removes the sunlight and heat aspects, so ozone won't form. Mow in the evening, same sort of deal. Or just try or combine trips. So take your, you know, if you have to go run to the store, if you have to run a bunch of different places, don't take separate trips. That just minimizes the amount of time your car is on the road. That's putting emissions into the air. So those are all things, or even very simple things like make sure you turn off the lights when you're not in a room. As I said, one of the ways that we get those pollutants in there or in the atmosphere is from power plants. So the electricity that you're using is coming from those power plants. So if we all lessen the electricity that we're consuming, it will lessen the amount of pollution that's coming from our power plants. So the EPA has come up with a really easy way for us to kind of see what our levels of ozone are in a given day. So if you are one of the risk groups, elderly, children, people with respiratory issues, or somebody who might be spending a lot of time outside, you can look every day. The Douglas County Health Department will put out a forecast telling you what they think that the levels of ozone pollution are going to be. We call it, it's coded on what we call the air quality index, which makes it very easy to see. Oh, okay, so this is a good day. I can get out. I can play a lot outside. You just got to look at the colors. We have green, which is 0 to 50 AQI. That means it's good. We're not expecting high levels of pollution in the air. Moderate, maybe if you have like severe respiratory issues, you might want to limit your outdoor activity. We get into the orange range, then those sensitive groups, like I said, children or elderly or people with respiratory issues, definitely want to limit their outdoor activity. If we get into the red or above, that is something that we definitely will see. We'll have health alerts out there. We'll say, kids, elderly people with asthma or COPD, stay inside. Do not go outside today. And it's very easy to check the AQI. You can just go to airnow.gov and enter your city, in this case Omaha, and you can look both what the current air quality is. You can see today, right now, we are currently at 9 a.m. I guess it was good. You can, if you scroll down, you can see here's kind of our whole region. Omaha's not showing up here, but we are in the green. You see Kansas City is currently yellow, St. Louis as well. But you can see, like I said, the Douglas County Health Department puts together a forecast every day, tells us what we expect the highest pollutant is going to be. In this case, it's ozone, but they say, you know, the AQI for ozone today is 37, which is good. So again, today would be a day where we definitely get outside and enjoy the weather. Tomorrow, they do expect it to be moderate. So if you do have respiratory issues, that might be something you'd want to, you know, to limit your outdoor activity. But yeah, so this is just a nice, it's just a nice tool where we can, you know, we can all check, see what our air, how our air is today and is going to be later and the next day, and that can both help us plan, you know, what we want to do, you know, if we want to go outside, if we think we should probably stay inside, and then also, you know, help remind us of, oh, okay, well, tomorrow it says it's going to be moderate, so maybe tell mom and dad to hold off on mowing until later in the day, or if they don't need to, don't put gas in your car until later in the day, or just put it off till a different day. So those are, you know, this is just a very easy way for us to both protect our health and, you know, help remind us of the things that we can do to keep our air clean. So that is the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, you can always email me at daniel.may@cityofomaha.org, and I will be happy to answer any question you have. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope you learned something, and hopefully we can all go out there and help keep our, do those little steps to keep our air cleaner. Thank you.